Alright, how's it going, y'all? So today we are going to be spending this entire video going over one of Synology's best features, especially for home and even a lot of business users, and that is Synology Photos. This is a great application that it's got a few quirks to it that makes it kind of hard to understand at first, but once you get the workflow down, it's actually very powerful, and it's a great replacement for Apple Photos, Google Photos, and just a way to consolidate your entire family's photos all into a single location. That's for personal use. For business use, I set up for a lot of clients. By the way, if you want to hire me, there's a link for that in the description. I set up for a lot of clients where essentially they've got the ability for all of their photographers to be able to have their own section and be able to pull up photos from any given shoot and say, hey, you're with a client, I want to show you this image. And just on like an iPad, being able to pull that up and see the high resolution image files and just a really easy way of seeing your past work is really nice, especially because it supports really good XF data. You can filter by ISO, you can filter by camera model, everything you can filter by, which can be very useful for photographers specifically who need to be able to say, all right, I want to look up this. Let's just look at things that have been tagged as portrait and filter down like that. All right, so in this tutorial, we're basically going to start from absolutely nothing. We're going to install Photos itself, show how to set up for multiple devices, how everybody can see everything. And then I'm also going to show some really useful tips and tricks that I do, especially when it comes to family things. Then from there, this is going to basically show business users, hey, these are some things I could do. I could tweak it this way and have it work for you, but it's really mostly going to be focused on a family setup because that's predominantly who this is designed for, though it is very adaptable, thankfully. And so this is going to assume you just have a Synology NAS and you need to be running DSM-7 or later. So previously there was Photo Studio and Moments, and they merge it together into Synology Photos, which is pretty much the best of both worlds for the most part. Some people who specifically had very specific workflows with PhotoStation don't love the upgrade though. All right, so before we get started, I'd like to thank Aura for sponsoring this section of the video. So what is Aura? Aura is an easy to use app that has everything you need to stay safe online. Aura sponsored the channel a few months ago, and since then I've been using the service. And there are really two things that I found really useful here. One, the robo-dialing. So after adding my cell phone number on the service, I don't think I've gotten a single robocall. And then the other thing is credit card monitoring. And so every single time I open a card or anything, within a few days I get an email, hey, looks like there's a new card on your account. Was that you? And it's nice having that reassurance that nobody's opening up cards in my account. Or it protects you from scammers and hackers by scanning the dark web for information of yours like your username, password, social securities, and alerts you if it finds anything. Their VPN also allows you to stay anonymous online by keeping your ISP from seeing your browser history and also keeping websites from seeing your exact location via your public IP address. Or it also helps you manage what your kids do on their devices. Or allows you to block specific apps, set screen limits, and also be able to set focus times where kids can only access apps at certain times. And their password manager allows you to stop using the exact same password for every single thing and instead generate unique passwords for every single one of your devices, which is one of the most important ways you can increase your online security. Maybe you already have an app that does one of these things. But with Aura, you don't have to download and pay for 7 different apps to do this. Let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online. If you sign up with my link right now, Aura will give you a 2-week free trial. You will be shocked to find out how much of your personal information was exposed just in those 2 weeks alone. Go to aura.com/spacerex or click the link in the description to sign up for your free trial today. All right, thanks to Aura for sponsoring this section of the video. All right, so now let's go straight into it. So the first thing you need to go ahead and do is log into your Synology NAS, and we need to go in here right with DSM. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go in the Package Center and just download and install Photos. We're going to install it. And now while that's working, I want to kind of talk through some of the setup here. And the first thing we're going to see right here is Enable User Home Services. So this is for the section if you want everybody to have their own little section of the NAS for their photos called personal space. So this is predominantly where, hey, you can put any photos you want there. Every single user can put whatever photos they want there and nobody else will see them unless they are shared. Side note, any Linux administrator will be able to see all of them. That's just how Linux works. But every single one of the users will not be able to see anybody else's photos unless they've been shared with them. And that's really how it's set up. And this is what's going to be called the personal space. So there's two kind of concepts here. There's personal space and shared space. The ideal way to set this up, after really tweaking it and messing around with it a lot of times, is you really basically want to use everybody's personal space as their own scratch area. They can do whatever they like there. And so you want to put probably the phone backups there, any images they don't want everybody to default and see on there. And then for family photos, where every single person should be able to see these, you put them in the shared space. I'm going to go all over all that here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say, yes, we want to create the home services. And so we're going to say yes and run. All right, so now that has installed, I want to go over a very quick commonly asked question. And that's essentially when we go into File Station, we're now going to see two new folders. We're going to see Homes and Home. And this is a Linux concept that is pretty simple once you understand it, but really confusing other than that. So if you look in this Homes folder, you are going to see a different folder for every single user on your NAS. Only if you're signed in with an account that has admin privileges. That's where it's part of the administrator group. They have admin privileges. So since I'm signed in as a account with admin privileges, I can see all the users' home folder. So right now I'm signed in with Will. And so I have this home folder right here, but I can also see it right here. So this is just basically the ability for me as the administrator to be able to see everybody else's home folder. Regular users will only see a home folder, and it's each going to be unique for them. So right now I'm signed in with Will, so if I had a new folder in here called Demo, and I then open up Will right here, it's right there. That's because this Will folder is the exact same folder as this home folder. They're just renamed and put in a different location, and so that way I, as the administrator, can see everybody else's accounts. And so everybody else has their own space that only they can see. Every single user, when they see the home folder, will see the home folder of the user they're signed in with. And so it's a way for everybody to get their own space. But it's a very commonly asked question that I get because it is kind of confusing. All right, so that's what I want to say. And from now on in the video, whenever I'm talking about the personal space, it will actually be in this home folder right here for each user. That's how it works, where everybody kind of has access to their own space. It's the home space where only they have access to, with the side note that administrators can still see it. All right, so now with that out of the way, let's go ahead and launch the Synology Photos app. And we've got some options here. So first off, it asks, do you want to do facial recognition in the personal space? So if you have a more powerful NAS, you can do this, or if it's useful for you. Note, when you import a massive library, it could take a couple days to do facial recognition on every single one of these images. Though once it's done, it only has to do it once. But just know that, it is local facial recognition. It's not sending off to a cloud or anywhere where it's basically taking your data. No, there's all on-prem facial recognition. So you do have to have your Synology running that facial recognition. So it can take a little while when you're importing hundreds of thousands of photos for the very first time, but then after that, it's pretty quick. And so I'm going to enable that, totally up to you. I do like that it is on-prem, which means you don't have to worry about your AI being used to train anybody else. And now we've got the option to download the Synology Photos app for either Apple or Android phones, up to you. These are great apps, and I'll show you them here in a bit here too. And so now we're just gonna say start now. The first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to go in and I'm going to want to set up a shared space so that everybody has access to this group location. So to do that, as somebody who has an admin account, we're just going to go in here, settings, and enable the shared space. So now when we go over back into DSM, we're going to see, if I refresh this, we are going to see a photo space. And we're also going to see in my home folder, a photo folder. So this right here is where it's really confusing, but once you understand it, it's pretty simple. So this photo folder right here, that is at the root level, which is a shared folder, is what's known as the shared space. So pretty much anybody will have access there. That's at least the setup I'm going to walk through here. And so it is a group place. Any images that end up there, everybody can see in the shared space. Then if we go into my home folder, we'll see photos. This is the folder that is my personal space. So if you can keep that clear and kind of understand that, it's really confusing at first, but once you get it, it's pretty simple. It's just tough to understand the very first time. Basically, every single user's home folder has a photos folder, and that is their personal space. And then there is a single photo folder at the root level up here called photo that is the shared space. So now we want to set up some permissions, and we're going to set this up very simply. And we're going to go in and we're pretty much just going to say all of our family members have access to this shared space. So the way we want to do that is we want to go into Control Panel and create a new group. And we're going to create a new group right here that's called Family. And we're going to say that has full access. So basically a simple group that says, hey, it's family. Anybody in family is going to have access to photos and the shared space. This is by far the easiest way to set this up. You can add any users in here that you would like to. I'll go ahead and add myself, though I will by default already have these permissions. And then you do not have to give them access to this photo folder, though you can if you would like to. If you only want them interfacing through the photo folder, the shared space, via the app, you can do that. Or if you want them to be able to dump their own files in there, you can give them read write to it where they can access it over SMB. That is up to you. I'm not going to in this case. And then we just need to give permission specifically to the photo application right here. Synology by default does not give all users access to Synology Photos, though I wish they would. Okay, so now that is done. The next thing we need to do is grant permission for everybody in that user group family to the shared space. All you have to do is do this once and then it's done, and that's it. It's just follow these steps and it'll make your life easy. So we're going to go back into settings, back into the shared space, and we're going to set access permissions, and we're going to select the family group that we just created, and we're going to give them full access. The reason you want to do this is how you can give people access to the entire thing, and they're actually going to be able to see the very nice timeline view. If you limit the permissions at all, they can only see folder level, which is not great. So you really want to set up family and basically have them full access to it here. Okay, it's done. The last option you get is right here. You can say enable people album in shared space. That is that facial recognition, not only in their users' home folders, in the personal space, but also in the shared space. I'll enable that now. Okay, so now that's all we need to do. We're basically going through and setting the basics up here, and so that way it's easy to build off of. So now we're going to go back in, and I'm just going to show you how to create a new user for this, and we're going to quickly give them a demonstration of what they're able to do. So right now I'm going to go back into Control Panel and go back into Users and create a new user. Let's say Bob. We're going to give Bob a username and password. And all we need to do for every single family member you add is tick this family right here when joining the groups, and then they will have access to everything we need them to have access to, one click. That is all we need to do. So now what I want to do is I want to show you how Bob is going to see everything. So I'm going to open up a new private browser on the right over here, so that way we can sign in as Bob and see everything through Bob's lens. All right, so now I've opened up Synology Photos as the user Bob. And this is what they're going to see the very first time. And so now we will see that anything I do over here will be through the lens of Bob. So I'm going to go ahead and go into Bob's personal space and add some photos. These can be uploaded from the phone. These can be done however you'd like to, but I'm just going to upload some really quick. Voila. Basically, we've got Bob's personal space. So now if I go over, I'm going to scroll back over to the left, which means I'm signed in as Will. I'm going to refresh my page. You can see I can't see any of those photos. My personal space has not been changed. So that means that Bob's personal space is all there. And just for people who need to kind of see it, we're going to go back into File Station as Will. And so we're going to go back in this Homes folder. And so we can see the Bob user. And now if we double click on it, we'll see Photos, Photo Library, and then year, month, date. We will see that those are the images. So when I dragged and uploaded them into here, it automatically created them by year, month, and uploaded the images in there. So this is Bob's space. So that's where the personal space is stored. I hope that makes sense. It's basically just as an admin, you can see it all. So now I want to go in and let's add some photos to the shared space. So as Bob, we're going to do the exact same thing, but we're going to switch over to shared space, which he has full access to because he's part of the family user. We're going to add another photo here, and we'll just upload some of my random wedding photos. So these have been uploaded into the shared space. So now we added these photos from the Bob user, but in the shared space, quote unquote. I'm going to go back in as the Will user. I'm going to go into the shared space, and we will see that I see all these images because they're part of the shared space. Everybody in that family group can see all the images there. It's by far the easiest way to handle this is everybody gets their own little section of the NAS. So now that is pretty much the basics of the personal space and the shared space. It's something that's pretty easy once you kind of get the hang of it, but at first it's kind of confusing. Essentially, your personal space is your own section of the NAS, and your shared space is going to be shared amongst your entire family. And just for those who see it better with files, if we go into the photo folder right here, we'll see that, boom, right here, this is the photo library right there. Those are all the images that were uploaded to the shared space. And so if you have a ton of DSLR images of your family throughout the years, you'll probably want to just drag and drop them right into this photo folder. And that way, Synology will automatically find all of them, add them in there, and show you them in a timeline view by date, along with all the XF metadata, which is very nice. All right, so now that's the big leap gone through. We now have gone and figured out the difference between shared space and personal space and how you can really utilize those things. The next thing we're going to want to do is kind of show some albums and how to share. So I'm going to go ahead and just close out of this Bob user now because we really don't need it anymore. And I'm going to open up as the Will user. So say I want to share these 5 images with the internet. Say I just want to share them to any people you want to be able to see them. You want to create a public link. So I'm just going to select them all and I'm going to hit the share button right here. So now it's automatically taking my quick connect right here and I can create a public link. This means anybody with a link can view. You can also password protect and everything like that. Or you can only share it with specific users. But for this case, I'm going to share it with everybody. So I'm going to copy it, hit save, and I'm going to open up a new private tab. So that way we can see it as if somebody who's outside of my network who's not signed in. And we can see right there, we can see all of the images. So that's an easy way to share images. And you can do this either in your personal space or your shared space. So that's basically how sharing works for public sharing links. All right, so that was the basics of how to share things publicly with people. Now I want to go over how to share things with other users because there can be some very useful workflows here for having different things. So if we remember, the shared space is kind of shared with everybody by default. That's how our setup is. But instead, we may want to be able to share with specific users. So say you've got some files that maybe you and just one other person need to see, but you don't want everybody to have access to them in your family. Who knows what they are? You can do that here. So I'm in my personal space. I'm just going to upload a quick photo here. So I'm just going to go in here and copy some photos into my home folder under Photos. And one other thing to note, any files you drop in here, it's 2 ways of looking at it. So any files you just drop in here in your home Photos folder will just show up in personal space, and any files you drop in personal space and Photos will show up here. Really, all Synology Photos is a UI for a file structure. And so that's one of the really nice parts about it is it's really just showing you the folder structure underneath in a much cleaner way where you can see all the images in a nice timeline view, but they're still stored in the nice folder structure that you've got set up, however you want to do that. So in my opinion, it's kind of the best of both worlds because it also allows you to walk away really easily, something that Google Photos does not allow you to do, as many users will have found. So now I just drop those in my home folder. So now if I go over to my personal space over here and refresh the page, we'll see they've showed up here. And we can confirm that by changing the folder view where, hey, look, now it's the same view. Now say I want Bob to be able to see all the files in this folder. This could be anything. This could also be your entire mobile backup. So say you want to be able to share all of your photos with your spouse, every single photo from your phone with your spouse. You could share essentially the mobile backup folder with your spouse, and now they don't have to bug you to say, hey, you took that photo at dinner, I want it really quick. No, they can just go on and just grab it straight from your folder without having to like deduplicate between everything. Essentially, they just have a folder where they can see it. So essentially, say we're going to choose this folder right here. We're going to go into albums and create a new smart album. That's a new conditional album right here. And we're going to say that this is, so I'm just going to call this Beach Horses, but what you could also do is the mobile backup. So I'm going to now just say any photos in this folder, so we're going to select the folder, that's Beach Horses here, are going to be shared. And so if you chose this to be your mobile backup, you could share it there. And so now we have an album that contains every single file in this folder. And so now all we have to do is share it with somebody. And we're going to set it to a private link. So only people we invite can access it. And we're going to, fortunately this is up here, we're going to add Bob to it. And so we're going to set Bob as a downloader. So Bob can basically see all the files in here and download them. So now we're just going to hit plus and be done. So now we can see right here, it's shared with Bob and myself. If we just go ahead and sign in as Bob again, we can see that under the sharing, we can see shared with me. And so if this was your mobile backup, they'd be able to always see any of the files there. And so it's a very easy way to see everything. And so that's a great section for being able to set up specific albums for, hey, all these different events, and then share them with people without requiring all of these complex things and without requiring every single person to have access to them. All right, and so just like that, Bob can see all this. And by the way, I want everybody to realize like this all is actually operable completely on your phone too, using the Photos app. But it's just a lot easier for me to show right here. But for the majority of users, 95% of the time, you're probably accessing the photos on a phone or an iPad app. Okay, so that is how sharing with a specific user works. And it's very, very, very powerful. So now I want to close out of here and I want to set up a new photo request. This is a great thing they've added recently that allows you to say, oh, hey, everybody send me the files from that party, from that event, from that hike, who knows, whatever. You can set up a new photo request. So we're going to go in and just hit photo request. And I'm going to create a new photo request. Give it a subject. And now what it allows you to do is it allows you to choose the destination folder. So I'm going to put it in my personal space. Wherever I want to put it, you can also put it in your shared space. And so we're going to say, all right, everybody upload these photos to this folder. And you can even add in some constraints here for expiration and, very thankfully, a maximum size per file so nobody sends you like massive raw files that you then have to keep. And you can also add them to an album if you'd like to. So now it's going to be create request. And so you'll see it right here. So I'm just going to copy that and open in a new tab so we can see it, new private tab, so that way we're not signed in. We can see exactly what other people will see. So now they're going to like, hey, add these folders. So now I'm just going to select them. And who knows? And we'll just select these guys right here. Whatever. You'll put your name right there. And now upload. So that is a way that you can get a bunch of people to send you photos. So now if we go back in here, we can see the photo request. We can click on it and see it right here. And you'll notice that these files were originally WGY, this number, but it's added a Will underscore to it because the name I put in there was Will. And so that's a great way to tell who sent what. And so just like that, you've got the ability to get people to upload folders to you without even needing an account on the NAS. It's really useful for collecting files from events and stuff, and it's a great thing they've recently added in there. All right, so now we've covered the overall sharing information. Now let's also look at some of the great filtering options they've got here. that you can choose to filter by. And this is where Synology really shines, specifically when it comes to professional photographers who need access to XF data, be able to filter by stuff very quickly. Using this gear icon up here, we can set any number of conditions that we'd like to that make it very powerful. You can do focal length, everything you might need, you can start filtering on, which is really nice. So you can filter by a specific aperture and get all of your images exactly like that, as well as Lightroom tags, any stuff in the XF data. Then we select an image. You can also go in info right here and you can hit more, and it's got all the XF metadata just dumped right here. So you can find exactly what you need. Anything in there you'll be able to find. It'll just show you it, which makes it very useful for professional photographers. They've also got some basic descriptions and rating here and tags, but that's really it. It's really designed to be a read-only application that just shows you your images rather than necessarily an application that lets you edit things. You don't want to try to add those features. I'm glad they don't. Some people wish they would, but in my opinion, it's spending too many calories on something that you probably can just do on a better app, and it's going to give you a way better experience anyway. So that's all the XF data. The other nice thing is these load in ultra quickly because they are JPEG previews, but you can download the full quality ones right here. And so it lets you over mobile stream all these ones because it automatically makes previews without having to download all these massive like raw files. And so the other thing that is nice, it does have support for the vast majority of raw files I've found. I've not really found any types of raw files that it cannot show you, which is great. All right, so now I want to give a quick overview about mobile backup. I'm not going to go into it in super depth here because, well, quite frankly, I've already done it in a very good video that you should probably watch. I'll just leave a link to this in the description below. But there's two things to know about mobile backup. For the best possible experience when setting up mobile backup, leave the default folder on because then it's going to store everything as the name of your phone, then year, then month. Really clean way of handling everything, and otherwise it just kind of dumps all the files to the folder, which makes everything slow because you don't want to have 100,000 images in a single folder because just loading simple operations ends up taking a very long time when you do that. And so keep it in the default folder, and the very first time you do it, you want to enable the sleep time backup. That's essentially where your app stays open. So one thing that iPhones do, which is why they tend to have good battery life, and Android does the exact same thing to conserve battery life, is if an app is running and the user's not opened it in a little while, it's going to force it into a low powered mode. And so for a photo app, that means it's only going to be able to upload maybe a couple hundred images. If you have a 150,000 image library, it's going to take very long time using the low power mode to be able to upload all those images. And so what you can do is on the photo app, if you go into more, enable sleep time backup, click that. What it will do is essentially it will leave the screen off, but the app on. That way it's like locking your screen, but the app stays open. And so iOS and Android will not shut down the actual application because the user still has it selected. So if you just hit enable sleep time backup, in 10 seconds, it is going to go where the screen is completely black. And so what you can do is without locking your phone, if you lock your phone, this will not work because, well, it'll lock. You can see it's black, but the app is still running. So the very first time you do a photo backup, just plug your phone in overnight, enable that, and that way the app stays open and your phone allows the photos to keep being transferred. Then when you tap the screen, it comes back on. So that is really useful. The other thing to know, and I get questions about this all the time, is, hey, I've got smart previews for iCloud, where essentially it does not store all the full resolution files on the actual mobile device. Instead, it only stores the small previews, and then once a user downloads it, then it shows the full ones. So that still works in this case. The way iPhone works is anytime an app requests an image, the image is then downloaded from the iCloud servers before being handed to the app. So the app will be uploading the full resolution files, but if you've got low internet and hundreds of thousands of images, every single one of them will have to be downloaded from your iCloud account and then uploaded to Synology. So I have found those do take a while, but for the vast majority of users, leave the sleep on and maybe it takes 5 nights. Probably though, it'll just do it in 1 or 2 for the vast majority of users. But it's just one thing to know. There's no other way around it just because you want your phone to be in power save mode. The other thing that's nice is those low powered modes that it's forced in pretty much gives enough juice to be able to upload all the images. I've been doing this for a few years now, I guess a year. And I've never had a case where it was not uploading all the images. Pretty much every single time I've ever needed an image, it was already on there. And so it definitely has enough power to keep consistent with the number of images, but it just can't catch up if you've got like hundreds of thousands of images. One final thing I would not recommend enabling is this free up space. Unless you really are okay that Synology is your only source for these photos, don't hit this because this will delete them from your phone. And while I love Synology Photos, I would not say you should just solely rely on it. I like it as a backup, not as the primary. And so only enable that clear all photos if you, it's like maybe, I don't know, it's a field phone and it's just taking videos. So you know it's just designed to be sent back. That I've had some clients use it for. But other than that, I would probably recommend just keeping it as a backup and a way to share all your photos rather than necessarily completely replacing your primary source for photos. All right, so now, last thing we're going to go over is going to be facial recognition. So now, facial recognition works completely on the NAS. So as I said earlier, it will take a while the very first time you upload a massive image library, especially with a slower CPU. But the way you get to it is you click Albums and People. And you can see you've got it in shared space and personal space. So in my personal space, you can see that it's found me and it's found my wife. So I'm going to say Will Yarborough. And voila. Now it's going to do its best anytime I upload images of either one of these people, it will try to add them to the groups. It's not perfect, and so it sometimes will require manual merging where it's like, hey, it's detected it's the same face, but like 5 groups of the same person. You just add those all under the same name and it merges it all into one big group. And that's the way you keep up with it. It works pretty well overall, especially after a while. Once it's done many photos, it does a very good job. And so it's a useful way to be able to see all of the images of that person. And it's really great to be able to go back and just see what you've got. I really like having facial recognition. And that's pretty much it. We've gone over all the Synology Photos parts on the mobile app, but I'll just leave a link to that in the description. It's really easy. You just sign in with your Quick Connect, username and password, and now you see everything on the actual phone rather than just being on the computer. If you'd like to hire me, there's a link for that in the description below. And if you have any other questions for tutorials or anything like that, put them in the comments below. All right, have a good one. Bye.